The killer who asked, "How do you get away with murder?" The question that started it all. It started as a question on a quiet Wednesday night. How do you get away with murder? That's what 22-year-old Ethan Vale typed into an online forum for true crime enthusiasts. He wasn't joking, at least not entirely. The username he used, TruthSeeker94, had been active for months, posting analytical takes on real criminal cases, studying motives, patterns, and police mistakes. To most people, Ethan was just another curious mind fascinated by the psychology of crime. But within weeks, his question would no longer be theory. Ethan was the kind of person you wouldn't notice at first. Polite, soft-spoken, and always ready with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He lived in a quiet college town in Oregon, majoring in criminology. The irony, no one would understand until later. He often spent nights at a downtown cafe called The Lantern, a cozy place where locals came to write, read, or work. The cafe's owner, Anna Brooks, was one of the few people who actually talked to him. She said he was sharp, a little awkward, but harmless. That word, harmless, would haunt her later. Because 3 months after that conversation, Anna would find herself in a police interview room, trembling, describing how Ethan once asked her, almost playfully, "Do you think it's possible to commit the perfect crime if you understand how investigators think?" At the time, she laughed. Everyone did. Detective Daniel Rowe didn't laugh when he read Ethan's name in a missing persons case file. The victim was 24-year-old Megan Doyle, a bright university student studying forensic psychology. She'd been last seen leaving a group study session one Friday evening. Her car was found 2 days later near a remote hiking trail. Doors locked, phone inside, no signs of a struggle. It looked staged. Rowe had been in homicide for over 15 years, and something about the scene didn't sit right. Megan's phone had one final search in her browser history. True Crime Forum, TruthSeeker94. The same username from that question about getting away with murder. Within a week, the investigation shifted focus. Detectives tracked Ethan's online activity, and what they found blurred the line between curiosity and confession. He'd written detailed posts breaking down unsolved crimes, even predicting how certain offenders would hide evidence or mislead detectives. It wasn't illegal. But one comment, posted just a week before Megan disappeared, froze investigators in place. If someone wanted to vanish a person without leaving DNA, you'd have to study behavioral patterns, not weapons. The smartest killers use psychology, not force. Detective Rowe looked up from the file and muttered, "This isn't research. This is rehearsal." Meanwhile, the community started whispering. Students who once studied with Ethan said he'd become distant, withdrawn but calculating. Professors remembered him as brilliant, methodical, and slightly unnerving. Then came the break investigators needed. Security footage from the Lantern Cafe the night Megan went missing showed her and Ethan talking near the counter. He was smiling, gesturing casually with a coffee cup. Megan laughed, waved goodbye, and left. Ethan followed a few minutes later. No one saw her again. When detectives searched Ethan's small apartment, they found a bookshelf filled with true crime novels. Mindhunter, Criminal Minds, The Anatomy of Murder. But what caught their attention wasn't the titles. It was a notebook labeled, Case Study, The Perfect Crime. Inside were sketches, case notes, and a chilling checklist. At the top of the page, Step 1, choose someone who trusts you. Detective Rowe flipped the next page, his jaw tightened. Step 2, never pick a stranger. They leave questions. The third line was underlined twice. Step 3, test your theory before you're ready. And at the bottom, a date. The same night Megan vanished. Rowe looked at the evidence bag containing Ethan's notebook and whispered. He wasn't studying murder. He was practicing it. But the most haunting clue wasn't the writing. It was what was missing. The last 10 pages of the notebook had been neatly torn out. And just when detectives thought they'd found their lead, a new post appeared under Truth Seeker 94, the copycat and the code. The post went live at exactly 12:01 a.m. No one knew how it was possible. The account Truth Seeker 94 had been inactive since Ethan Vale's arrest warrant was issued. His apartment was sealed, his laptop confiscated, and his phone shut down by forensics. But somehow, that single post, 5 words, appeared online, and within hours, it had been shared across every true crime forum in the country. Detective Daniel Rowe sat in the digital forensics office, staring at the screen. The new message wasn't just a taunt. It contained a string of code embedded in the HTML, a GPS coordinate. The location: the Lantern Cafe. The cafe had been closed for days, ever since the police sealed it off as part of the investigation. Anna Brooks, the owner, had moved in with a friend, trying to escape the glare of media attention. When the detectives arrived, the air still smelled faintly of roasted coffee and rainwater. Dust had settled on the counter where Megan Doyle and Ethan had last spoken. Detective Rowe's partner, Officer Ramirez, crouched near one of the back tables. "Sir, you might want to see this." On the table was an envelope. Written in sharp black ink, a message read, "Step 4. Leave them guessing." Inside the envelope was a single Polaroid photo. Blurry, blue-tinted, like an old CCTV still. It showed a figure standing under the same streetlight where Megan's car had been found. The timestamp was from last night. Rowe clenched his jaw. "He's mocking us, or someone wants us to think he's still out there." Back at headquarters, digital forensics revealed something even stranger. The Chapter 2 post wasn't uploaded from Ethan's apartment or any nearby network. It was posted through a virtual proxy, bouncing through multiple countries before ending at an untraceable signal from a public library Wi-Fi. But one tiny error gave them a lead. The signal ended up in Portland. Detective Rowe called for a search order. At 2:47 a.m., they raided a small apartment above a bookstore in downtown Portland. Inside, they found walls covered in newspaper clippings, pinned maps, and strings connecting every missing person in the region over the last 5 years. And on a desk in the corner, a glowing laptop screen showing the login page for Truth Seeker 94. Except the name on the lease wasn't Ethan Vale. It belonged to Lucas Wren, a 19-year-old criminology student who had dropped out the previous semester. When they brought Lucas in, he looked almost relieved. Thin, pale with dark circles under his eyes, he didn't resist. "You think I'm the killer?" he said calmly. "I'm not. I'm a student of his work." Rowe frowned. "Ethan Vale's work?" Lucas nodded. "He wasn't what you think. He was testing people, testing who would pay attention. He left clues everywhere. You just didn't see them." He smiled faintly, leaning forward. "And he's not gone. He's evolving." Rowe kept his tone even. "Ethan's been missing for 2 weeks. We found his car abandoned, his blood in the trunk. You're saying he's alive?" Lucas didn't blink. "I'm saying he's watching." 2 days later, the case took another turn. The media dubbed it the copycat conspiracy. News outlets ran footage of Lucas being escorted in cuffs, his blank face framed under harsh fluorescent lights. Protesters gathered outside the station claiming the police were covering up something bigger, a digital cult inspired by Truth Seeker 94. And then another forum post appeared. "You found the wrong student." This time, it included a sound file, a distorted voice speaking just one line. "Detective Rowe, you're not supposed to be in this story." The tech team ran audio analysis. The distortion masked everything except one thing: the background hum of a ceiling fan. Rowe, he knew that sound. He'd heard it 100 times in his own office. By the next morning, His desk was covered in printed screenshots of every Truthseeker 94 post ever made. Patterns emerged: times, phrasing, and digital signatures. Each new upload coincided with a different missing persons report from years earlier. Ethan hadn't just been studying crime. He'd been mapping it. Every clue pointed towards something bigger, a timeline no one had ever noticed. And in the final photo from the cafe's security archive, Roe caught something new. Reflected faintly in the cafe window behind Megan, and Ethan was another figure, tall, wearing a baseball cap, holding a camera phone. The timestamp matched the exact minute Megan walked out of the door. Forensics enhanced the image. The reflection showed part of a logo on the stranger's jacket. It wasn't a police badge. It was the symbol for the university's forensic research department. The same department Ethan Vale once studied under, and where Detective Rowe had once lectured as a guest investigator. Rowe whispered under his breath, "This isn't just his story. It's mine too." The clock on the wall ticked once, echoing through the silence. That's when the next post went live. The detective's turn. The post appeared at dawn. For a brief moment, Detective Daniel Rowe just stared at his computer screen. His reflection in the monitor looked older than he remembered. Eyes tired, jaw locked, haunted by the one case that refused to end. Whoever was running Truthseeker 94 wasn't hiding anymore. They were calling him out directly. By mid-morning, the task force gathered in the operations room. The tension was thick, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Rows of evidence photos stretched across the wall. The cafe, the storage unit, the missing notebook pages, and now, a grainy image of a figure in a baseball cap. Detective Ramirez broke the silence. "Sir, the timestamp on that reflection. We matched it to a surveillance feed from the university. Someone logged into the campus lab system from your credentials at 9:04 p.m. the night Megan disappeared." Rowe froze. "That's not possible. I wasn't even near the university." Ramirez nodded grimly. "We know, but whoever used your credentials accessed the forensic psychology archives, the same department Ethan Vale studied in." The words hit Rowe like a slow-moving train. He had once taught a guest lecture there, years ago, when Ethan was still a student. He remembered a quiet young man sitting in the back row, taking notes on criminal decision-making. Ethan's question that day had stuck with him ever since. "Detective, if someone truly wanted to outthink the law, how would they do it?" Rowe had laughed it off at the time. Now, the memory felt like a confession he'd ignored. Forensics traced the latest Truthseeker 94 post to a remote cabin near the Cascade Mountains, an hour outside the city. The cabin had been rented under a false name, paid for in cryptocurrency. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had left. When Rowe and Ramirez arrived, the forest was quiet, blanketed by mist. The cabin's windows were dark, and a faint hum came from inside, the sound of a generator. Rowe's flashlight beam cut through the dust in the air as they stepped through the door. The cabin was nearly empty, except for a desk in the corner. On it sat a laptop, its screen displaying a live video feed. The feed was of Rowe's own office. Every angle of his desk, his bulletin board, his chair, all of it watched by a hidden camera. And on the laptop, another message appeared in real time. "Welcome to the experiment, Detective. You were never investigating me. You were part of the data." Ramirez whispered, "This isn't just a killer. It's a system." Before Rowe could respond, the laptop chimed. A voice recording began to play. Calm, articulate, unmistakable. It was Ethan Vale. When you study killers long enough, you start to see patterns. But what if you could create one? What if you could prove that anyone, even a detective, could be turned into a suspect with enough manipulation? On the table lay a file folder labeled RoeX. Inside were photographs of Rowe's lectures, his old class attendance sheets, and annotated notes written by Ethan himself. Each one detailed Rowe's investigative techniques, his tone, his biases, his decision-making under pressure. Ethan hadn't just studied crimes, he had studied him. Suddenly, the laptop camera light flickered on. The live feed switched, and now it wasn't showing the office. It was showing the cabin itself. Someone was watching them. Outside, the crunch of footsteps broke the silence. Ramirez stepped to the window, flashlight raised. But the sound was gone. Just fog, wind, and the echo of the forest. Rowe's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. "You can't arrest what doesn't exist." Seconds later, the laptop screen went black. Then, a single image faded in. A digital copy of Ethan Vey, Lee's missing notebook pages. At the bottom of the final page was a signature line that made Rowe's blood run cold. Step 5. Let the story write itself. That afternoon, the cabin was sealed and logged as evidence. The forensics team couldn't trace where the signal had originated. Every data point, every post, was scrubbed from the web within hours, as if the account had never existed. No one ever found Ethan Vale's body. No one ever proved if he was alive. But weeks later, as Rowe packed up his office to transfer divisions, he noticed something small wedged between two case files on his desk. A USB drive. No label. He hesitated, then plugged it in. A folder appeared. Inside was a single audio file. Detective Rowe. The familiar voice whispered, calm as ever. This isn't the end. Every story needs a new narrator. The recording ended. Rowe stared at the screen, realizing that Ethan's greatest creation wasn't a murder. It was a legacy of obsession that would never die. And somewhere, in another dark room, someone new was already typing. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe because the next case is already online.